past presidents of the institution, elders and fellows of the institution, noble colleagues, gentlemen and ladies of the press, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the 56th Annual Conference of the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, which started on Monday, April 13th, ending on Saturday, 18th of April, 2026. I'm highly excited and overwhelmed with joy to see this array of highly distinguished personalities seated here this morning, despite your very tight schedule. This is an indication of your high regard for our profession, evidence of your belief in its vision and objectives of promoting the highest standards of estate surveying and valuation practice in Nigeria. It is also an appreciation of our contribution to national economic development. We are especially honored and highly elated by the rare privilege of having you in our midst today. This is a proud moment for us, and we appreciate your presence. I want to sincerely welcome His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Abia State, Dr. Alex Chioma Oti, OFR, who is ably represented by the Deputy Governor. To this occasion, your presence here signals our shared commitment to shaping a new economic frontier and future for our nation. That your dynamic leadership and purposeful governance of this God's own state has opened up this landscape to attract investment. That your performance in the area of infrastructure development has strengthened the economy of the state and enabled the government to deliver quality services which have impacted the lives of the citizens of Abia State tremendously is never in contention. Thank you, sir, for believing in our profession and for enlisting our members as partners in the development of Abia State. Thank you also for being a good host. We most sincerely appreciate your generosity through Abia State's support for the hosting of our conference. I also want to appreciate the Honorable Supervising Minister, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Architect Ahmed Musa Dangiwa, who is unavoidably absent, but in any case, we appreciate him for what he's doing for our profession. As Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers flagship event, our annual conference has established itself as the premier program for cutting-edge insights into the power of real estate in building wealth and in driving national economic development. The conference, in addition, has and will continue to serve as a pivotal platform for knowledge exchange, for discussions that foster innovation and collaboration by real estate practitioners, industry experts, and critical stakeholders tailored towards defining real estate practice for value delivery in our nation and across the world. Just as we started 56 years ago, we converge on the city of Umuahia this year in the spirit of visionary critical stakeholders to extray, highlight, and analyze investment in real estate development as corridors and catalysts of infrastructure investment for sustainable economic development, particularly under the renewed hope regime of the current federal government. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is an understatement to say that Nigeria has been facing infrastructural challenges over the years. The Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers has followed with great concern the deteriorating state of infrastructure which the current administration is critically addressing. It is against this background that we have gathered for these few days to explore the vital issues of real estate development, how it can stimulate investment in infrastructure, and ultimately economic growth and development, improve quality of life, support national prosperity and security, especially when it is channeled through investment-enhancing corridors. For this year's conference, the institution has chosen the theme, Corridors, Connectivity, and Capital, rethinking real estate development along renewed hope infrastructure investments. I could not think of a more appropriate theme at this auspicious time, since it is not within my purview to encapsulate the breadth and depth of our full deliberation within the opening address. I will enjoin all participants to meaningfully engage in the conference sessions and to make the most of the opportunity, even as I wish us all very beneficial deliberations. I, however, seek your indulgence to allow me to outline the overarching goal which this unique opportunity represents for our nation. NIESV 2026 conference has been strategically designed to transcend our accustomed trajectory. This year's edition offers us a critical opportunity to interact with major industry players, critical stakeholders, and policymakers, and share our perspective on the connection between real estate development and infrastructure investment corridor, a critical aspect of economic growth and development. More emphasis is on innovation with a vibrant and sustainable economic development in view. Even as we highlight and articulate options that enhance a thriving real estate development, interconnectivity of quality infrastructure and real estate investment corridors. In order to discuss this theme exhaustively, keynote speaker Professor Bankole Awuzie, PhD, Salford, and other resource persons have been carefully chosen based on their competence in both public and private sectors. Lead speaker and second vice president of the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, Estate Surveyor and Valuer Dr. Emmanuel Mark, had earlier, I think yesterday, given an insightful and commendable analysis of the theme of the conference. At the end of our discussion, far-reaching recommendations shall be forwarded to the government and relevant agencies. I am confident and optimistic that the recommendations will serve as imperatives for building a robust institutional framework to stimulate the reinvention of real estate development for enhancement of infrastructure investment with corrective actions and strategic steps to ensure structural upgrade of investment corridors, namely roads, ports, industry zones, and transportation hubs, to mention a few. I enjoin delegates and participants to attend the plenary and all other sessions, physically or virtually, as the case may be. I also invite you to adopt an opportunity lens as we navigate these complex dialogues. Excellencies here present, thank you so much. Permit me to appreciate most respectively again the special guest of honor, the Executive Governor of ABIA State, His Excellency Dr. Alex Chioma, OTOFR. We most sincerely appreciate your presence in our midst, sir. I also want to thank our supervising minister, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Architect Musa Dangiwa, senior government officials, representatives of government, heads of government agencies, chief executive officers of corporate organizations, and stakeholders in the build sector here present. Thank you for attending this landmark event. I thank the president of the Association of Professional Bodies and also president of other professional bodies represented here. I appreciate you all. My appreciation also goes to the keynote speaker, Professor Bankole Awuzie. Thank you, Prof. I welcome you once again to the 2026 Annual Conference of the Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers. Enjoy to the fullest the rich menu of the conference and that of the great city of Umuahia. Let me end this address by commending everyone who has played one role or the other in putting this conference together. And I must recognize the Central Planning Committee and especially the branch, the ABIA State branch of the institution led by the chairman. I thank you all for your contribution to the success of this conference. With this, it is therefore my honor to officially welcome you all to the. I also want to thank His Royal Majesty for giving us audience day before yesterday. Your Majesty, thank you so much. We appreciate the warm hospitality of the throne. We pray that you will reign for long on that throne in good health. Thank you so much, sir. With this, it is my honor to officially welcome you all to the 56th Annual Conference of the Nigerian Institute of Festive Surveyors and Valuers. This day, Thursday, April 16, 2026. I wish us fruitful deliberation and a pleasant stay in this God-owned state, ABIA. Thank you for your attention. God bless the Nigerian Institute of Festive Surveyors and Valuers. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Please, let's give another round of applause to our 26th President for delivering a wonderful welcome address. Thank you very much, sir. All right, we'll just take some few recognitions and we'll flow with the program. I just want to find out, Abia State Branch, is the cola ready for presentation? Abia State Chair, is your cola ready for presentation? All right, so you can get ready with that as soon as you're set. Well, let's make welcome an eminent personality in our midst that has come to grace this occasion with us. His Royal Majesty, Eze Okechukwu Onwubuariri, Aguku Nechemba 1 of Azueke Ibeku. Please put your hands together for His Royal Majesty. May we also make welcome Honorable Tony Onyenweako, the President General, Azueke Ibeku. Thank you very much, sir, for honoring us with your presence. May we also recognize Prince Charles Onwubuariri, the Prince of Azueke Ibeku, is here with us. Thank you very much, sir. May we also recognize the representative of the Oni of Ife, Otumba Ayo Olumoko, Regional Vice President, Institute for Tourism Professionals of Nigeria, ITPN, Cultural Consultant to the Oni of Ife. You're most welcome, sir. Thank you very much. May I also recognize the registrar of our board, Estate Surveyor and Valuer, Janet Shehu. Please, you're welcome. May we also recognize Engineer Dr. PDI Ndubisi, the Rector, Federal Polytechnic, Izochi, Abia State, ably represented by the builder, Ugoiri John, Dean, School of Environmental Design and Technology, Federal Polytechnic, Izochi. Thank you, sir, for coming. We appreciate your presence. Please do well by clapping your hands to encourage them. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to flow with the program right away.
Okay, so because of time, the next item on our schedule is our keynote address by our guest and keynote lecturer, Professor Bankole Awuzie. Professor, in fact, there's a change. For once, I thought it was one of our chiefs, but he didn't say yesterday. Please, let's make welcome on stage so that we can really give a short citation. Please make welcome Professor Bankole Awuzie.
All right, that's our keynote speaker.
We'll be speaking on corridors, connectivity, and capital, emerging logics of real estate development in Nigeria. We'll do a brief, please come up stage, sir.
Just take a brief citation.
Noble colleagues, our special guests, invited guests, our royal fathers, our past presidents, and BOT members, and others present. I may present to you Professor Bankole Ositadimma Awuzie, PhD, PMP, PRCPM. Professor Bankole Ositadimma Awuzie is a professor of smart and sustainable built environment in the Department of Construction Management and Quantity Surveying at the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. He is an internationally recognized scholar whose work focuses on advancing sustainable, digital, and circular transformations within the built environment. He holds a PhD in built environment, specialization in construction project management from the University of Salford, United Kingdom, and he has obtained advanced qualification from Robert Gordon University, Imo State University, the Central University of Technology, and Stellenbosch University. With more than 2 decades of combined industry and academic experience, Professor Awuzie brings a unique blend of scholarly insight and professional expertise to the study and practice of sustainable infrastructure delivery. Professor Awuzie has authored and co-authored more than 200 peer-reviewed scholarly outputs in leading and international journals and has supervised numerous doctoral and master's students to successful completion. His research, in fact, his contributions have earned him recognition as a rated researcher by the South African National Research Foundation, NRF. He has also secured over $2 million in external research funding and community engagement grants, supporting interdisciplinary projects aimed at promoting sustainable construction practices and circular economic adoption. He in chief of applications of circular economy and an associate editor for several international journals in sustainable construction and project management. He is also a certified project management professional and a professionally registered construction project manager, PRCPM. Through his research leadership, editorial contributions, and engagement with industry and policy communities, Professor Awuzie continues to contribute to the transformation of the built environment towards smarter, more sustainable, and resilient infrastructure system. Ladies and gentlemen, with a resounding ABIA State welcome, please make welcome on stage Professor Bankole Awuzie, our keynote speaker.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Technical, please, the slides.
I think I'll just start. Good afternoon, delegates. I was going to ask to stand on existing protocol, but I believe that it will be a misnomer. So I would take a few, and then I would proceed with my talk. So I'd like to acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Abia State, Dr. Alex Choma Oti, OFR, ably represented by his Deputy Engineer Ekwe, I believe. And all the distinguished guests of honor here, the president and chairperson of the institution, Chief Longe, the first vice president, NIESV Malam Bature Ali Mohammed, the second vice president, Dr. Emmanuel Mark, members of the board of trustees, management committees, and elders and fellows of the institution. And I would, with a note of caution, say noble colleagues. I think I've been admonished to say you didn't register professionally as an estate surveyor and valuer, so you should say delegates instead of noble colleagues. So thank you very much for the opportunity granted to me today to come here to share as the research that I've done or that we're doing around corridor development or corridor-based development. The title of my talk this morning is, it's going to be doing this, Corridors, Connectivity, and Capital, Emerging Logics. I think we're having a problem of, okay. So my name is Bankole Awuzie. The title of my talk this morning would be on Corridors, Connectivity, and Capital, Emerging Logics of Real Estate Development in Nigeria. To start with, I think it's a very topical issue that we've decided to look at corridor model development in our country. Normally, what we do in addressing the infrastructure deficits that we've experienced for so long would be to commission roads, to build very narrow transportation models for the purposes of conveying goods and services and people as well from different points, from point A to point B. However, we have suddenly transformed into this new mantra of developing our infrastructure, bearing in mind the impact, the territorial impact of that investment and infrastructure that is being carried out. And we are not the first to do this. This is something that is gaining commonplace across the world. So my presentation will run as follows. So I would start by setting the stage, as well as talking about major corridor developments that we have in Africa currently, in Nigeria. And I'll as well talk about the issue of the emerging logics, which is moving from site-based development, moving towards territorial development. I would also be talking to issues around connectivity. What do we mean by connectivity? The conference is themed Corridors, Connectivity, and Capital with the Renewed Hope agenda. And the question is, what do we understand as connectivity? And that's what I will be talking to today. We'll also be looking at the changing of geography of opportunity. What happens when we situate this kind of corridor model infrastructure development in certain neighborhoods, in certain communities? How does it change growth opportunities for real estate? We'll also look at the political economy of infrastructure, as well as social spatial risks. It's not all rosy developing or adopting the corridor model of infrastructure development. One thing we should be looking at is, what are the risks that are likely to be associated with this? What are the socio-spatial risks that are likely to be associated with this? And I'll also provide some South African and Malaysian case studies of seemingly best practices that we have engaged with in the past. And then I'll propose the main thesis of my talk, which is the need for an integrated governance framework for driving social inclusion and economic development, as well as capital investments in corridor model development in our context. And then we'll have the key key questions, and then conclude. So setting the stage. I think we are all very conversant with the definition of the corridor-based development mantra. This concept has gained currency in our developmental nomenclature. Today, we talk about this as referring to urban and real estate growth that is concentrated along major infrastructure routes, and such as your highways, your integrated railways or transit lines. But we've also moved beyond this to start looking at digital and renewable energy-based corridors. And these corridors are expected to help us to create new opportunities for development, bring out new land for development, reduce travel fares and travel times, thereby keeping more money in our pockets, as well as increase accessibility to infrastructure and infrastructure services. So, like I said, I'll start by looking at these three main concepts that underpin the quest for infrastructure development. We'll say infrastructure is no longer viewed as that which is a mere background or condition for urban growth. Rather, it is the enabler. It has become that enabler that drives the restructuring of markets, land markets. It drives the redirection of investment. And that is the essence of corridor-based development models. These days, we look at development clusters along major transport alignments and mobility systems, not just standalone roads or standalone railways, but how do we integrate this towards driving growth around the periphery and beyond, creating nodal architecture. So you'd have new logistic hubs, you have newer hubs coming out. And again, access. So when we start planning such kinds of developmental models or infrastructure, we should start thinking about how does it support connectivity, and how does that connectivity drive land values? How does it drive the restructuring of our markets, of land markets, as estate surveyors? And what other roles can we play in engendering improved connectivity? As well, another concept is the capital-mediated transition or transformation that happens. The main question that we should be asking ourselves would be, is this a new frontier for rent extraction? Is this a new frontier for capital appreciation? Because capital would always go where there is demand. And the question is, when we plan our nodes, when we plan our corridors, what are we actually looking for? Are we able to attract capital? And I think that was very key in the lead paper that was presented by NIESV Mark yesterday, where it was more about PPPs and how do we bring in PPP, private-public partnerships to drive this. So how you plan and how you situate this infrastructure would actually either attract or repel investment. And that's what we'll talk about capital mediation in this instance. I know it sounds new these days. Growing up, our perspective of corridors would be the passages we'll see in houses between the sitting room and the bedrooms and things. And that was our perspective of corridors. And we used to look at roads as roads, transportation hubs. And this is not new. If we go back to looking at the infrastructure that we have today, the ports, you see that the infrastructure, the colonial era infrastructure that we had, were created in such a manner that we're able to extract raw materials from source and send them straight to the ports for export. And that was our own version of the corridor mentality at that point in time, funded by colonial masters for the businesses that they needed to conduct in their countries. So we became more like a raw material producing entity or geography. And that was more, coming into the cities, the traditional logic for this became an instance where we were more or less focusing as valuers, estate surveyors and valuers and planners, who were more or less focusing on the central business district model or approach to growth, to urban development, to urban growth. We're also focusing on, So I was talking about this, and then we were looking at peri-urban residential estates. Our mindsets were driven by what is the demand focus within a particular metropole? What are the indigents or inhabitants looking for? And that drove our mentality around how we developed our urban spaces. So it was not funded by any territorial advancement or growth in the indices or indicators. Today, as we propose and transform more towards the corridor logic from the traditional logic of urban development, we're now talking to instances that have to do with setting up of development spines across these corridors. How do we have the clusters? And how do we select the routes that these clusters, this developmental spine or this corridor would pass through? We've also started looking at the node and corridor systems. What kind of hubs would you place? Let's take, for example, if we were running from Onitsha to Lagos through Shagamu to Benin, what kind of hubs would you place where? The River Niger is one of those places that you can use as a hub. And what would you put in there? Would it be a manufacturing belt, or would it be a tourist belt, tourist attraction belt? And that's how you also move on to perhaps Benin, and you ask yourself, what kind of hub would you have there? And that's what we talk about the node and corridor systems. And we also talked about territorial frameworks. I note in the lecture yesterday as well that emphasis was made using ABIA as a particular case study. And the question would be, when we talk about corridors in the right sense, we should normally be driving towards regional integration. We should normally be looking beyond the immediate context that we are in, because we're trying to move people to places of connectivity, of work. We're trying to move capital to where it would never have gone to before. And that's the essence of this linkage, this connectivity and capital investment that we're talking about today. So connectivity, I look at connectivity in my paper as something that is tangential to value production. If you're not connecting two dots by a line through a very viable platform, through a very viable context, using good or initiatives, then you wouldn't find people wanting to gain access to anywhere. You wouldn't find new development coming up. You wouldn't find improved mobility. And that is what we're talking about. And again, the improvement of value that land has. This is conferred on it by who and where these corridors pass through. Delegates, I would come to something that we're quite familiar with. I think the projects that are currently ongoing, and I use Nigeria as a present focus. We can all see that there is a change in opportunity of real estate in Nigeria, particularly with the new coastal highway, which is being delivered under the current administration, and other highways that are coming up from Badagry, from Sokoto to Badagry, and all that. You could see here that it's talking about coastal redistribution. We now have land being developed around this corridor to provide for tourism and mixed-use development. Okay? If you're driving through Patani in Warri and all that, you would still see that there is no development that is structured around there. And that is a lost opportunity for us as valuers. That's a lost opportunity for the society as well. So why don't we create value by embarking on this? And again, inland expansion, transport infrastructure expansion, inland. So it mustn't really be by the peripheries of the cities or the states. We can also do this through already existing infrastructure by linking them and expanding them. And with this, we're able to create secondary cities. Today, we're still dealing with the issues of rapid urbanization. We're dealing with issues of congested cities, poor planning. So the question would be, how do we use corridor-based logic to support the expansion or the creation of new secondary cities in our context? So here, this is in summary, you would see that the corridor infrastructure model, that development model that we're using, has become a state strategy. It's no longer something that is in isolation. Globally, countries looking at South Africa, Malaysia, even the US, and even in the United Kingdom, where we talk about the Lake District, for example, are all examples of corridors. Most governments, successive governments, are increasingly utilizing corridors to drive development as state strategy. Again, it's also helping investors to position capital, to know if you have a plan and you provide a direct initiative that you're going to be embarking on a corridor between Owerri and Aba, or any of these axes, you would find, we know there's not a one-day project, it's really a gargantuan project. You'd find investors keeping money. You find speculation happening, people trying to know or invest in the future of that project, in the land area that borders that project that we're talking about. So it's also something that has happened with issues around speculative holding, land holding. There's a lot of speculation that is happening in those areas, land speculation, and we have to now decide whether it's ethical or unethical. But again, there's land speculation that happens around the periphery of this projects, and we also have land repositioning, issues around mixed use, issues around change of use, and repositioning of land to be able to cater to the highest and best use. As part of those issues that I also associated with this corridor-based development model would be distribution. And this is something that affects us, that speaks to our profession as estate surveyors and valuers. Who gains from these corridors? We'll talk about local communities. We'll talk about people who reside around those areas, who gets compensated, and how much is fair and adequate compensation. Noting that most of those areas that this road span through, or this kind of infrastructure spans through, are usually remote rural areas where there is no formal titles to ownership, for example. And these are things we should be asking ourselves. So who gains more? And again, small developers who are unable to raise funds to participate in speculative landholding, how can they compete, or how can they withstand being muzzled out of the market by the bigger developers? And these are things we should think about, and that's why I talk about the political economy of infrastructure under a corridor-based developmental model. So, why do corridors matter now in Nigeria? Why are we talking about corridors? It's become a big thing now. Before we were doing roads, we were doing railways, and these were all disparate projects, not yielding the value that it should yield to the relevant communities. So the issue is, we're saying that our investments in transportation should not merely be about mobility only. Rather, it should be about reshaping settlement patterns, changing the legacy colonial labyrinth that we've had, spatial transformation, helping us boost land values for our citizenry, and helping to enhance development prospects and make them clear to us. So development across nations is fast becoming corridor-based. Delegates. And values are becoming increasingly connectivity-driven. Land values are driven by connection. Which town leads to what town? What is in this town? Do I work in that town? I can live in this village and still have access to the city quicker and cheaper. And that drives value, land values in the rural area, in that bordering community. Again, investments are being increasingly capital mediated. So the amount of money that's available will drive the investment. So investors are becoming more particular about where they put their money in. And so in planning our corridors, we must ensure that it has the nodes to support investments. And so, real estate implications of this corridor-based model are far beyond the immediate right-of-way. And that's why we should be concerned and why we should be interested about this. And I think that's why I want to congratulate the institution for bringing about this topic. I've now got a challenge. Okay, so thank you. So these are the corridor-based projects that are ongoing currently, besides the rail infrastructure. So you could see the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, initiated by the current administration. You could see the Sokoto-Badagry Super Highway, which seeks to connect the northwest to the southwest. linking the agrarian production zones that we have in the north to commercial centers in the southwest and the ports. You could see the Calabar-Abuja Trans-Sahara Highway, which also links the south-south to FCT through a chain of inland states. So this is going to help to ease transportation, help to bring about land value appreciation in areas that we wouldn't even have previously imagined, and would also reshape the patterns, the spatial patterns that we have currently in a manner that boosts economic growth for the people, for the generality of Nigerians. So I'll provide a little bit of case studies about instances to show that this is not just new and it's gained dominance. If I recall, in 2013, I was made aware of a corridor that was being initiated, an energy corridor by 6 South states, the Braced Commission. And that was one of the projects that had the renewable energy projects along a particular corridor. However, I'm not sure it came to fruition eventually. So, permit my very busy slides, I'm just trying to run through this. So you could see the Gauteng corridor development that we have in Johannesburg, and this seeks to link Pretoria, Johannesburg, and OR Tambo International Airport. And around the periphery, land has maximized in value. We now have developers, and we also have businesses springing up in precincts that host stations, stops for the HOW train. This was never the case in the past. So you'd have businesses now springing up, employing people, and workers are able to move from Soweto, from Alexandria, to these precincts to work for free, for cheap. You know, the transportation costs were very, very reduced significantly. And we also have the Konobia Integrated Development, which is in Durban, which has successfully, because it links the Durban ports to the King Shaka Airport, International Airport. And this has successfully repositioned Durban as a logistics hub for the whole of SADC, not just South Africa, but the Southern Africa Development Area, SADC. So Durban has become the Durban ports and the King Shaka Airport. And you have a lot of factories, businesses springing up around there, not just for manufacturing, not just for not innovation parks alone, but we also have mixed residential developments coming up in that area. And I believe that most of us have been to the Mall of Africa, or some of us have been to the Mall of Africa, which at a particular tourist delight for most of my friends. There you'd see it's housed in Waterfall City in Midrand, and it has it was formerly an agricultural area, and today it's become a commercial hub, having trading portals and all that within that area. You have big corporates like Nedbank setting up offices in that area currently. And that has brought about increased activity and land value appreciation as well in this particular community. Okay, so sorry, my span is getting limited, so I have to be somewhere here to do this. So this is the Malaysian case study that we have. You can see the map. You can see the locations of this. Is that idea? Okay, so you can see in Malaysia, this is the map that shows the corridors that are there in Malaysia currently. And you see the Sabah Development Corridor, you see the Sarawak Corridor for renewable energies, and you see the Iskandar Malaysia Corridor, which spans through Johor Bahru, which is just very close to Singapore. And you can find the Northern Corridor Economic Region. So you'd have a lot of, it's not just here that we're talking about these highways and these coastal highways. So it's a global phenomenon, particularly in the developing country context, where we still have land and we have to still plan how to situate or maximize infrastructure investments to drive land appreciation.